Everybody, it's Pandy, and I'm playing World of Tanks. I want to thank everyone for their warm welcome back to my video, the patent video. You simply are the best. You guys spent a whole 10,000 minutes watching that patent video. Just holy shit, that's awesome, and I want to thank you guys with another video. So the next video is going to be the T-62A, since you guys were talking about it a whole bunch in the patent video. I'm going to do what I do, and I'm going to talk about it. Now, the T-62A was basically a response to the M48 patent and Centurion's ability to defeat AP rounds coming from the 100mm main gun from the T-55. Heat rounds with the 100mm served as an intermediate fix. However, it requires more training to handle the ammunition, and along with that, training for the crew who had to fire it. They explored other options to see if they can upgun the T-55 with a maybe 115mm smoothbore cannon capable of firing sabot rounds, or kinetic energy penetrators. Oh, I think I fucked that up. Whatever. They found that some of the prototypes of the T-55 were just simply incapable of handling the recoil and stresses. So the modernization project was dropped and a new project was started. One of these projects that have already been in the works was the Object 140. The 140, basically what they took was the 100mm main gun that they were developing from it, and then basically took the layered turret system that came from it and put it onto a stretched T-55. The stretched T-55 with the new turret and gun was dubbed as the Object 165. The 165 was basically the development of the chassis and the turret for the T-62. What they saw was three prototypes developed. They tried different cartridge case, ejector, suspension system, and along with that, trying to balance out the weight of the vehicle itself. They also saw other minor changes, like experimenting with different kind of infrared searchlights mounted for the gunner and the commander. This became the basis of the production model for the T-62 and the T-62A. While the 165 was in development, the 166 focused on the 115mm smoothbore cannon. From what I can tell, they basically took a 100mm main gun, took the rifling out, made it thinner, and made it longer. And what resulted was a 115mm smoothbore cannon capable of firing double the range and double the speed of, say, a 100mm main gun. The only drawback of this is basically the gun was not as accurate as, say, a rifled version. The issue was ignored mainly because the margins of inaccuracy was so minor that it was just not even worth mentioning when it came down to how accurate is the gun. It's almost as accurate. If you can hit a tank from 2,000 meters away, there's no real question about how accurate it was. The 165 and the 166 were both approved for production. However, the 166 saw mass production as the T-62, with a little more than 22,000 being built during its lifetime. Now, the T-62A, or the 165 with the 100mm main gun, never saw mass production. It was only built for about a year until it was decided to go ahead and go full speed at the 115mm. Now, I could get into the history of the T-62 with the 115mm, but I don't really want to, because we're talking about the T-62A. It's essentially the same tank, and what I will say is the tank saw combat in every major conflict since 1969. The only major tank-to-tank fight that was with Syrian forces against the Israelis during the Yom Kippur War. And the Israelis are some sneaky fuckers, man, I'm telling you. They would allow the T-62s to drive right past their positions, and then they'll rotate their turrets toward the enemy and fire at them in the side armor. They will mount these like photo projectors that just gave off some really high levels of infrared, basically blinding the infrared searchlights on the Syrian tanks. And the Syrian tanks, it was, I don't want to say bad tactics, because they made the best of what they wanted, but attacking a defended position or an entrenched enemy with armored and infantry will always result in heavy losses, no question. There's only a handful of examples of attacking force attacking a heavily defended position and not taking all that many casualties. There's not many, and it usually involved very small numbers, and it was ineffectual to the overall scope of the war. Along with that, the Syrian commanders will not deviate from their pre-planned attacks and timetables, so I mean, they'll reach their line of advance planned for the first 24 hours of the fight within 12 hours and won't advance anymore, mainly because they went, we made it, we did what we supposed to do first day, we need the rest. The Syrians lost the initiative, and the Israelis made them pay for it by regrouping and mobilizing more tanks and throwing it into the battle. Now, the Israelis were smart. When they counterattacked to regain their lost lands, Syrian forces basically were already mauled, already beat up, and they couldn't continue the attack. What the Israelis did, on the other hand, is instead of attacking them headlong, they tried to surround them, and while they're trying to surround them, they would just drop artillery right on top of them until the Syrian forces either A, broke up, surrendered, or fell back. This is how the Israelis managed to regain some strategically important positions instead of attacking head-on into them. And basically, the Israelis won just through the sheer fact of just better tactics and strategy. We would have seen a much bigger show of force if the Syrians decided to counterattack right when the ceasefire was decided to be signed. I mean, the Syrians were ready to go with 5 divisions worth of armored and infantry right at the end of the war, but held off for favor of the ceasefire and saving the Egyptian Third Army. From what I can tell and from what I've read about the T-62, it was evenly matched against the armor that it had to face of the time. Nowadays, it's not as capable. I mean, upgrades can make it effective against infantry, and it's good for third world armies or defense forces to have armored fighting vehicles to be able to help infantry forces. But there's much better tanks out there with fire control systems that just will outwit the T-62 now. But of the time, the T-62 was a very, very capable fighting vehicle, and I'm actually quite sad that we don't have more examples of it fighting. It's one of those tanks that got developed and was never really used in anything but minor conflicts. Well, I don't want to say the Soviet war in Afghanistan was minor, but at the same time, it did not see tank-to-tank fighting on the scale of, say, the 6 Days War or the Yom Kippur War. I'm pronouncing that wrong, but we didn't see any of that. Within World of Tanks, the T-62 is great. Within reason. The firepower on the T-62 is pretty nice. It just doesn't have the massive punch of, say, the Batshit or the M48 Patton, but it does come with a really quick reload. I do like that quick reload. It does feel as accurate as the 105mm from the Patton, but around from that, it fires just like the American counterpart. It just reloads faster. Lower alpha, too. It is great for hunting scouts, mainly because you do have the fast reload, and the alpha is large enough to where 2 shots of any scout will die. But the lower alpha does require basically more shots on target, which will give you more chances to miss, especially when you're firing at other medium tanks maneuvering against you. The quick reload does help with that, but it does allow for a potential of missing more often. And missing with a lower alpha can result in some bad times, just really bad times. But overall, I do like the gun. The quicker reload, the lower alpha does not really bother me, and the accuracy is great. I just don't like the gun depression. Overall, I do like the gun. Now, the armor on the T-62 is decent at best. It's nothing compared to, say, a heavy tank, but its overall shape and shortness, no offense to short people. And the think dome turret helps make this overall package decent. I do like facing off against tier 8 enemies because they just simply cannot penetrate your armor, and from a haul down position, even tier 10s will have a hard time getting through that turret. Nothing short of a 150mm main gun is capable of getting through the sides of that thick armor. Now, the thick armor on the sides of the turret do make the package really good and decent, but what about the front hull of it? The front hull of the tank is good for what it is from long range fighting, as long as you keep your armor kind of like slanted at an angle against the enemy forces. Anything with 200mm or lower of penetration won't get through your front armor from 300 or 400 meters away. It's a really good, decent armored setup. The obvious weakness is your side armor, and that's where the mobility will come into play, where you can basically turn that tank any direction you want to basically place that front armor up front of you. The tank itself does feel light in my hands, so it does really catches air really easy. I have to slow down at times when I'm going down hills because I'm afraid of taking damage and breaking something. But due to the lower horsepower of the engine, it does take a little bit longer to get up the hills compared to, say, the Batchat. On flat ground, though, you are very, very much like a medium tank with everyone else. You know, you can keep up with the Batchats, you can keep up with the Leopards. It's just a decent mobility. Even on extreme turns, it turns really well. I do like it. Its mobility is not a problem. So overall, I do love me some T-62A. It's a pretty damn good balance between firepower, armor, and mobility. It's becoming one of my favorites. I generally have a hard time with the autoloaders, mainly because they fire so quick, and having the lower alpha doesn't really scare them. What scares them is just the fact that you can reload really quickly. As long as you support heavy tanks or wolf packet with a whole bunch of other medium tanks, you tend to like really fuck up some people really, really well. The only major problem I got is the gun depression, but like I said, the rest of the tank is good enough to make this a non-issue. I would say that the T-62A would come across, for me at least, as highly recommended as a good first tier 10 medium tank. We're at that part of the video where I get to give away some gold. Again, it's the same amount. It's 6,500 gold to the North American side or 5,500 gold to the European side. Along with that, to the guys of the Southeast Asia servers, I'm still trying to get an account and get it worked out. You guys will probably be next time. Sorry. Now, to win said gold, you must post a comment down below, maybe about the video question, which is, How do you feel about allowing folks to be able to buy premium consumables and rounds for credits? I think it's great. They claim that the game is free to play, so they should allow people to buy pretty much anything without buying a single cent of gold. Granted, the premium tanks should probably still remain as cash, mainly because it's just their premium tanks. So ignoring the tanks, everything else in the game is now free to play. You can buy anything with credits. Granted, the credit amount of buying, say, an automatic fire extinguisher is crazy expensive, but I think it's a good thing because I buy automatic fire extinguishers for all my tanks now. It lowers your chances of fire, and it doesn't even require a button push to put the fire out now, so it's just a much quicker response time to fire. Fire is a bitch, so you just want to, it's something that I bought for all my tier 9 and 10. That's how I feel about it. You guys tell me how you guys feel about it. I'm Pandy. I appreciate you guys watching. Good hunting.